Hello, Misfit Nation, all you Misfit entrepreneurs out there. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below, give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Alex Concepcion. Alex has a very interesting story, but let's say that fate helped him find his way, and part of that fate was never working for someone. As he'll share, it took him a while to find his way, but he did so in starting a niche in high-end apartment location. His business is called Taco Street Locating, and it's based out of Austin, Texas. Alex went from broke to having a business that pays him multiple six figures a year, allowing him to work when, where, and how he wants to. And he's also the author of the forthcoming book, The Rebel Entrepreneur's Guide to Risk, Riches, and Immortality. Hearing that title, you can probably guess why I asked him to come on, because I could not resist, right? You can hear it in the title. And so I wanted him to share his journey, his lessons learned, and everything in between. So let's jump in. Alex, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
Oh, yeah. I have a lot of misfit to unleash here.
Well, good, man. Well, listen, it's a pleasure to have you on. And as I alluded to, you've got an interesting story. It took you a little while to find your way and really get to a point where you've been able to create, everything that you've done, right? So take a few minutes, 5 minutes or so, and just tell us, how did you get to where you're at?
I got to where I'm at by burning all the bridges to all the things I wasn't supposed to do. So that included going from, I think I'm going to work in a corporate job based on what my degrees were setting me up for. I graduated college, spent 2 years not getting hired by anyone. And I'm like, well, this isn't working. And it was the classic self-sabotage, like something deeper inside of me was like, hey, whatever path you're on right now is not for you. And it just took me a while to see that I've got to get off this path and do just something else. I just didn't know what that other thing was. And so I burned my college diplomas in a sense of just spiritually just derailing myself from that path. I'm like, okay, I'm starting from scratch. I'm hitting the reset button and I'm moving to Austin. At that time, I was living in Miami with my parents, watching all my friends get jobs, get hired. By that point, even getting promotions, and I'm still broke. So I find myself in Austin, and I get a job at this like fast-growing startup company. And I'm some entry-level data grunt, and I'm there for a few months. And I'm like, this is also not it. I could tell all the senses, all the alarm bells inside of me were like, nope, this is also not it. So I quit that and with no backup plan, and then spend more years, about 2 years, just hopping from side gig to side gig, like real estate photography. I sold cricket to protein bars for a few months. I found myself in Southeast Asia, traveling with a food documentarian for a few months. And then I come back home and I'm like, I'm broke again. So in the middle of all of that, I got my real estate license, kind of just because my mom was pestering me. Just get it. Fine, mom, whatever. I'll get the real estate license. So I'm back in Austin after being in Asia for a few months. And I'm like, I need money. I need to pay rent. By that point, I'm already asking my dad for rent money. And I'm like, I'm 27 years old, asking my parents for rent money. And that does not feel good at all. But that's when I stumbled into this niche called apartment locating, which if you don't have that in your city, it's this type of real estate agent that helps people find apartments to rent. And it sounds really simple and basic and easy and obvious, but it actually is a pretty big business. And I go from I'm making nothing to I'm making like 5 grand a month, and then 10 grand a month. And then fast forward, I've got my own agency, Taco Street. And then the pandemic begins. And I go from I have a full sales pipeline to I have no sales pipeline. I'm like, oh God. I've now escaped being broke, and I have time, and I could travel when I want. And I'm so much further along my journey than I was a few years before. And I'm freaking out. And I'm thinking, oh no, everything that I built can just go away. And fast forward a few months, the exact opposite happens, and my business doubles in size that year. And it's the first time I hit multiple six figures. I probably hit like 225 that year. But then that led me to ask the next question: why is my business doing so well when so many others are collapsing? And that question became the first domino that led to the book that I have now. Because it's a big question, it
So,
turns out.
hearing that, yeah. Well, and hearing that too, it's interesting how fast things can change. Number one, right? I think that's
Mhm.
something that I think anybody listening, watching, as an entrepreneur, it is amazing how fast things can change in both directions, right? So I always say you kind of have to have this kind of like little bit of a little healthy paranoia as an entrepreneur, and just be on guard for both things. When things are going really, really well, when things are maybe not going so well, right? Be ready for the other side, because there's always the opportunity out there. So, listening to you, you went through a lot to find your purpose and find your way as an entrepreneur. So, what are some of the biggest lessons that you learned on your journey so far that you think other entrepreneurs should know?
Oh man. You don't need business degrees to be good at business. I have 2 business degrees, and they played virtually no role in how I operate my business. Business, when you really get down to it, it's very simple. And if you understand just foundational principles and you have a basic level of competency, that's really all you need. You don't need to be a genius at math or spreadsheets. I mean, it all helps. But starting from just basic principles of what a business is, what a business is for, basics of sales and marketing takes you really far. And the way I was able to go from zero to a lot was just applying good foundational principles to business, using good technology, using good freelance operations, uh, knowing how to
What
present
are what are some of
myself.
those what are some of those principles? Yeah, what are some of those principles? So you mentioned like good foundational principles. Like, so what are some of those principles you use to build upon?
Understanding that you're here to solve a problem. And in my case, my business helps people find apartments. It's really simple, but I have to position myself as someone who is capable of solving that problem. And I have to present myself as someone who is worth trusting to solve that problem. Because there's a lot of people who do this. There's a lot of other agents out there, but what I'm better at than 99% of them is I'm more effective at communicating that I'm a real person you could trust, and I'm very competent at solving this specific problem that you have. So that's one example.
While we're on Yeah, while we're on that too, I want to talk a little bit about your business. So I think one of the things too, and this maybe is part of those principles and stuff, is I think from what I read, you do things differently than a lot of these other agencies. So you found a way to not only be in a niche, but to separate yourself. So talk to us. How does it work? How have you built it to allow for the lifestyle that you want? And most importantly, how can entrepreneurs build their business for the lifestyle that they're looking for?
First, that's understanding what do you want? What are you optimizing for?
Hmm.
And for me, I'm not optimizing for how much money I can make. I'm not optimizing for, well, what I'm optimizing for is just enjoying my life and having freedom and sovereignty. And before I started the business, I was a big time traveler. Even when I was broke, I was able to make it happen. And I knew that when I did have my business, having the time and space and the ability to continue to travel, or maybe it's just spending time with my family whenever I want. That was super important to me. So I came to my business with that perspective. So
Hmm.
that's why I focused a lot really early on building systems and operations so that I can offload a lot of my own time to either technology or people and free up a lot of my own time. Because there are ways, if I really wanted to, I could grow this business a lot. But where am I now? I kind of just don't want to because that's not the relationship I want with this business.
Hmm.
Uh, so it just goes back to like, what do you actually want? And is it what you want?
I think
Uh,
No, I was gonna say, I think that's a great point. I love hearing you say that because it's, in the world that we're in, it's like, your business grow, 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 grow. It has to be this big and it has to keep going. That's not necessarily true, right? And you've kind of built it, you've got it to where you want that it provides the lifestyle that you want. But I think that key, like you said, is you got to know what you want. And I've often said that most people don't get what they want because they don't know what they want. And
mm,
so, how can I mean this is an offshoot from what we were originally talking about, but how can somebody figure out what they want? Like, do you have a process that you went through? Are there things that you would give from advice for someone to help really figure out what they
mhm.
want? I know what I would say, but I'd love to hear from your side how somebody can figure this out, because I think that's the key thing. Like, if you don't know what you want, you're not going to get what you want. So
Mhm.
if you don't take care of that, it's going to be hard for things to fall in place. So what advice would you give in that area?
First is just to even ask the question and giving yourself permission to ask the question and recognize that you have the power to answer that question, especially now in the time that we live in, is probably the best time in history where we can actually imagine what we want and build what we want in ways that's never been possible
Hmm.
before. And I know for me, when I left my uh, first and only job, I remember getting back home and just thinking, now what? And it was kind of terrifying because I had no idea what I was going to do, nor what I wanted. But what I did know was that I now had the time and space to begin asking and answering that question. So I think time and space is critical just so you could even like muse on what that answer is. And
So yeah, first take the time to even do it.
yeah.
I think that's something that, and it sounds funny to say that, but I think a lot of people. When's the last time somebody actually just sat down for a few hours and started asking themselves, like, what do I really want? Like, why do I
Hmm.
want it? Like, and then going second, third, fourth, fifth level deep, right?
Hmm.
So I think, I mean, obviously, it seems obvious, but it's something that rarely people do. So that's a great
Hmm.
point.
And then I think it's a lot easier to understand what you don't want.
Hmm.
And in my case, I didn't want to live a life of Sunday scaries, of having to be this fake version of myself that is what I would need to be to fit into this company or whatever it is. I didn't want to let somebody control when I could and couldn't travel and see my family. I knew I didn't want to do work for people I didn't like. So it was a lot easier for me to know what I didn't want. And it's like this negative space way of approaching it. It's you may not get to what you want immediately, but you'll be able to triangulate and get closer to the bullseye just by figuring out what you don't want. And I've gotten very far along that journey, but I'm still not at a bullseye. I'm still not in the
Right.
center. I still don't know how I want to grow professionally, what direction, and what that's going to look like, but that's okay. And I'm going to. I have ideas of what I want to do, but because this apartment located thing, it's been great to me, but I know this isn't the forever thing, and I have the time and space and the security where I'm like, okay, I could really spend time to answer that question of what's next for me. For right now, it's the book and bringing that to the world. After that, I
Right.
have no idea what's going to happen.
Well, that's
But
the interesting thing, though, too, or the exciting thing, I should say, is that once you've kind of built one of these businesses that can fund the lifestyle that you want, that's the whole point. It gives you the freedom to build essentially the next one and the next one after that, and that sort of thing. So I think that's the maybe like one of the key things to this is that your wants are going to change, right? People's wants change over time. My wants change, and every so many years, I've got different things that I want to do. Anything, and then you have other things that happen in your life, like marriage, kids, and other things that change a lot of that stuff too, right? That can happen. So I think it's not just a one and done thing. I think it's something that you need to do it. Maybe a couple times a year, right? Sit down and really ask, okay, what do I want? Where am I at? Am I still on the same path? Do I need to adjust my path? And how do I do that? I think those are some really important exercises to do, and things that, like, when I coach people, that I have them do, right? So I think you make some really great points in talking about how it's not a definite. Once you figure out what you want for now, it's going to change, and it's going to keep changing. All right. So, Alex, we were talking about building your business, building your lifestyle around, or building your business around your lifestyle, as you will. And we were talking about how entrepreneurs really need to focus on, like, what they want, why they want it. And it occurred to me, like, I guess my thought that I had is, like, what's the biggest thing, like, what for you, what do you think's made the most difference in your success to this point? Because you've had a roller coaster ride. So, like, if you had to pinpoint, like, hey, here's the one thing that made the most difference for me and allowed me to get to this spot to where I have this freedom to be able to do this, what is it?
it's a cheesy answer that a lot of people say, and it kind of just blank out of the mind. But it is being honest to myself. And when people go to my business, Taco Street, they're going to see a part of my essence and my soul in that business, in the way I write and how goofy it is and fun it is and playful it is. That's me. That's who I am. And when people go to that, they see that. And what they see is not a business, they see a human. And people want to do business with people, not generic company brands. And there's this weird, like, overlap of self-expression and raw pragmatic survival. In my case, it's the more I show up as myself in my full essence, and, like, this business, for example, the more that shows up in the brand, in the service, and all that stuff. And that makes people want to choose me over working with other people, which solves you kind of winning in two ways, where I'm just winning by being myself.
I
And
think that's a really excellent point too. Win by being yourself.
mhm,
In an age where, I mean, gosh, so many things are fake. and so many people think they have to be something they're not to stand out in the world. And honestly, I just saw a thing the other day that Tom Hanks, the actor, is out there having to say, "Hey, there's a video of me going around promoting like some dental solution that is not me. They've like literally created a deep fake of me saying I love this dental solution. Buy it. It's nothing like I'm involved with or anything. Like we've reached that point, right?
Oh my
So
God.
I think more than ever, people like yourself that understand being truly honest and authentic to who you are and just sticking with it are the ones that really do stand out. And maybe that's why your business is done as good as it's done. In fact, you're saying this and I'm thinking, why'd you name it Taco Street Locating? Like, I mean, talking about your personality coming out, maybe answer that and then we can get back into some of these things. Why'd you name it Taco Street Locating?
Have you been to Austin before?
I have.
Yeah. Well, then
And I know there's tacos just about everywhere.
Yeah. So I'm thinking like every street is Taco Street. And then I'm like, okay, I have a real estate business in this wonderful city of tacos everywhere. And I just thought it'll be hilarious and silly and playful and ridiculous to have a taco themed real estate business. And it is. I love telling people the name of it. I'm not just some other like Alex sells Austin type of real estate agent. That would be me being a fraud. Because that's me being dishonest to myself and who I am and just trying to fit a mold of what everyone else does. And what you see in business pretty much everywhere all the time in all industries is everyone is copycatting each other. Everyone's a copy of a copy of a copy. And without asking the obvious question, like if you're just like everyone else, why would anyone choose you?
It's true. Which it gives me to another question. Do you like tacos?
I love it. Yeah, yeah.
I gotta show this to the camera. This is from my sister because I always joke about tacos. So this is my little thing that's on my desk in my office. You can't please everybody. You're not a taco. I keep that right there where everybody walking in can see it. So, so now that we've derailed from everything here, we can get back on track. So in fact, it's probably a good segue into your book, right? So, The Rebel Entrepreneur's Guide to Risk, Riches, and Immortality. Love the title. Risk, riches, and immortality, right? Three things that I think anybody is like, hey, give me some of that, right? When we first met, to discuss an episode, you mentioned something that I thought was pretty interesting, and it surrounds the book, and we'll go more in depth on all this, but you said that we need not to focus on risk, but the inverse of it. Explain that. Explain what that means.
So it's really both. The reality is most entrepreneurs don't make it. And we don't hear their stories. No one goes on podcast tours when their business collapses. So all we see are the bright stars in the sky who get to tell their stories. And it's useful. Like there's a lot of stuff we could learn from people who've made it. But most of us don't make it. And there's a lot that can be learned from those stories, from when things go wrong, from these horror stories that a lot of people go through but don't want to talk about. So first is just acknowledging that there's a lot of risk and darkness in what we're doing. But at the same time, none of us are just here to focus on the bad stuff. Like if you're an entrepreneur, you're likely an optimist by nature. And you're not here to merely survive. We're here to win. And my definition of risk is just really simple. It's just potential bad stuff, which is like, duh. But if you just invert the bad part to good, you just have potential good stuff, which is my definition of opportunity. And the reality of what we're doing as entrepreneurs is holding the tension between both, is that between risk and
Yeah, explain that
opportunity.
more.
Yeah. So we're all just trying to survive and make it in a world of uncertainty. And uncertainty can be good and bad. Um, and how do we make decisions that where the downside is survivable? It's like, oh, okay, I'm okay with that downside, but the upside is really high. And the example that I do in the book. So if I present a scenario where you could lose $10,000, and that's all you know about the scenario, you'd be like, no thanks. So you would spend all of your time focusing on not losing that $10,000. That's the frame if you're only looking at risk and downside. But the reality is that there's always both. There's always downside and upside. So then if I change the scenario and I introduce the upside, you could lose $10,000 and you could potentially make $100,000. That changes everything. Then you'd be like, you know what? I'm okay with losing that $10,000. Let's lose 20 if it gives me the chance to make that $100,000. So it's not about seeing merely one or the other. It's about seeing both together. And same thing, if you only see upside, if you're only thinking like, yeah, I can make $100,000 without realizing you can maybe lose 1 million, then you're going to make bad decisions. So the way to make decisions that where the downside is survivable, but the upside is high, is to be able to hold that tension between risk and opportunity and not lose your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's a great great addition to it. Yeah, and not lose your mind. But I think that's what makes a great or entrepreneur, is that having that ability to do that, right? And owning businesses and going through, it's one of those things like, there's like schools, there's like programs on how to be an entrepreneur now. You can like actually get a degree in entrepreneurship, and I think those things are pretty good. I've spoken to a lot of them before and stuff, and it's a great base. But the real entrepreneurship is when you got to get into it. You got to go through those trials and tribulations. You got to wake up one day and, like I've been in, where your accountant says, "Hey, you've been growing like crazy, but you've been spending way too much cash, and you're 2 weeks from going out of business. So figure it out." And then you got to figure it out, right? And you got to, make things stay afloat and make it work. And then, so that's when you have to get creative. You have to, do all kinds of things to figure out how you're going to get to that next goalpost, and so on and so on. And that's the journey of entrepreneurship. That's what and after you've done it so many times and figured it out so many times, I don't ever want to say it gets easier in the sense, because every challenge is a different challenge in a way, but your tolerance essentially goes up to those things, right? So, okay, another problem, let's figure out how to solve it, right? It's not a massive panic or anything like that, like maybe it would have been years earlier when you hadn't dealt with things like that before. And I think that's where that balance between risk and opportunity comes in, because in those times there can be tremendous opportunity. But if you're only focused on your fear, you're only focused on your risk, then you're going to miss it. I remember during COVID, we had our largest business was in the software space. And we actually provided software to the travel industry, which overnight basically was shut down. And so it was like, how do we keep this thing afloat, right? We've got clients all over the world, and everything else. And so we actually doubled down on sales, actually, and marketing, and grew our client base the most we'd ever grown it in a span of less than a year, more than the last few years, right? and we had to do some crazy deal stuff and things like that, make it work. But coming out of it, that's what ultimately got that business sold, that growth and everything too, and so it was finding that opportunity in the pain or the risk and the fear or the bad time that really made all the difference for us in that. And I think that's I mean, if there's one thing people take away from watching this episode, I hope they take that away, and I hope they learn that from you. And I guess while we're on it, that's part of the book. What are 2 to 3 other important lessons or pieces of wisdom that you share in the book you think that entrepreneurs should know?
The biggest one, I would say, is your reputation. Invest in and protect your reputation. That is the ultimate asset. It's something you own 100%. It can't be taken away from you. It can't be copied or stolen from you. Your reputation is why people are going to hire you, buy from you, give you money, everything. If you have a strong reputation, you're basically invincible. There's a thought exercise I like to do. It's if Warren Buffett wakes up tomorrow with zero, no money, no assets, no nothing, how long would it be before he's a billionaire again? I think about 5 minutes. One phone call. Hey, can you wire me $1 billion? People will give it to him, no questions asked, because he has a strong, undisputable reputation. And that's the one thing that you'll carry with you. No, even if you're in a business now, if your business goes away, you still hold on to your reputation. That cannot be taken away from you. Number 2 would be the question, do I like my business? And that kind of talks about what we were discussing before, but it doesn't matter how much money you're making if you hate your business. I think that's a much more useful question. What can I do this year to make me like my business more? Maybe that is more money. Maybe that's firing clients you don't like. Maybe it's offloading work. Maybe it's shrinking the business and instead of growing, just doing less. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's even shutting down the business. And the irony of this book, where it's largely about surviving, that maybe for you, the entrepreneur, to survive, your business has to go. So you can give yourself time and space to do something you actually want more. The third one, much easier, much more something you could do today, right now, is anyone listening to this, go into your expense account for your business and look for stuff that you don't need anymore. Just all those random subscriptions and software and all of this and that you don't realize you're still paying for. Get rid of all of it. I did this. I've made it more of a practice for me, but I did this last week when I got back from Europe, and I saw my sales software somehow went from $50 a month to $500 a month. Where did that come from? Then I saw one of my advertising platforms go from like $70 a month to $700 a month. Just behind my back, no notifications. I had to go back into my expenses and be like, what the hell is going on? And I think most people listening to this just have a bunch of nonsense expenses that they're still paying for, they don't realize. Get rid of it and use that money to buy me a taco. But yeah, that's what I got.
So, last question on this, and I got one more for you, if you could, before we get to Misfit 3. Immortality. How does that fit in?
I think it goes back to reputation. It's a strong reputation keeps you basically invincible. But I think if you want to go deeper, it's making something beautiful, because beauty is eternal and it's indisputable, it's obvious. I think that's the key to real immortality. Why do people still go to the Colosseum? Why do people hike beautiful mountains? Why do people still go see Renaissance art? Because it's beautiful. And I think that's how you become immortal.
Through beauty. That's a really interesting way of looking at things and stuff too. And I think, anybody that takes some time to contemplate all the beauty that they have in their life and that they've created and could create,
Mm.
it could make a real difference for them. My last question has to do with people. So looking for a place to live it's very important. It's many times it's an incredibly emotional journey for people. So what is helping people find a home taught you about people? And how can that relate to entrepreneurship?
For me, it's the proximity that I get to the problems I'm solving and the value that I'm creating. I think it's a really non obvious thing, but when I help someone move to Austin, for example, I'm helping them solve a really important problem. Like, it's not a difficult problem for me to solve, but I get to have an impact on how they uh, experience this city. I get to have an impact on how they live and the choices they make. And because they meet me, I'm going to influence the path that they take in this city and the lives they take. It's not, it's meaningful to me. And I'm connected to that. I'm connected to the value that I'm creating and I get meaning from it. I think a lot of people are disconnected, especially in jobs, are disconnected from the value that they're creating. And if they're creating any value, I think that's why a lot of people kind of have this sense of emptiness, is that they're disconnected from what they're doing. So,
You
yeah,
know,
it's,
go ahead.
yeah, for me, it's finding connection and meaning in how I'm improving someone's reality and making that part of the energy that makes me want to put more of my creativity into my business.
Yeah, I can see how it does that for you. And you probably do the same to them, obviously helping them find I get imagine once you help somebody find their ideal place, how happy they are, right? So it brings joy in that sense too. Okay. It's time for Alex's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take away that you can take, put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is to say, hey, look, if you're going to leave this earth tomorrow and you can only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom for the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Alex, what are your Misfit 3?
When it comes to the first one would be, we all live in a world we don't control, and it's our job and responsibility to adapt to a world we don't control. The second one would be, competition in business isn't real. Whoever your customers are, they are the ones who choose you or someone else. And it's your job not to beat someone in a competition, but to become irreplaceable so that customers want to choose you, so that clients want to hire you. It's, how do you become irreplaceable? I think that goes back to reputation, why it's such a valuable thing. The last one would be, you are the biggest risk to your business. You are the one responsible if it lives, dies, thrives, whatnot. And the success of it is going to be based on the choices that you make. And this goes both ways. It's If this thing does well, like, yeah, you are responsible for that. If it doesn't go well, you're responsible for that too. So it's looking at yourself and your role in this thing that's the key to, I think, real sovereignty.
Alex, that's an excellent Misfit 3. I especially love that second one. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
So I've got my book's website, survivalfirstbook.com. Uh, yeah, that's if anyone's interested in what I'm writing and the launch of this. It comes out early 2024. Go there. I'm also writing a long series about the making of the book. So if anyone's interested just in what it's like to write a book, everything from the emotional parts to the tactical parts to the logistical parts, I'm doing an entire series on that also.
Awesome. We'll link to all that in the show notes, the best show notes in the business for reasons I'll talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneurs, your first episode with us, it's such an honor to have you with us. And I hope you become a regular watcher, listener, subscriber. And for all of you that are with us week in, week out, I cannot thank you enough of your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure and go out and check out the show notes for this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself. As part of my personal growth routine, I go back through these episodes with great entrepreneurs like Alex every single week, and I pull the best tips, pieces of wisdom, insights, and everything. I share those with you. So check those out. And then go out, give this episode a rating and review, like and comment on it. Help share Alex's message, because we all know, and I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Alex shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Alex, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Thank you.